Imagine waking up from a decade-long abyss, your world vanished, your identity stolen, and your death meticulously staged. For Ethan, 10 years in a coma was his forced vacation. Now, the architects of his betrayal were about to learn that the ground they thought he occupied was merely a false grave, and his return would usher in their own personal hell. Flashes of blinding light, searing bolts of agony, then nothingness, again and again. He drifted in and out of consciousness, a prisoner in his own mind. Sometimes, fleeting whispers reached him, distant and distorted, as though echoing from the deepest ocean trench. He desperately tried to reach out, to form words, to simply move a single limb. Yet, his body remained unresponsive, a lifeless shell. This time, however, the radiance was softer, muted, akin to a hazy dawn struggling to pierce through a heavy, suffocating mist. Vague, indistinct shapes wavered at the periphery of his vision. He tried to cry out, but no sound escaped his parched throat. A cacophony of unintelligible noises, fragmented words, sharp clicks, persistent beeping, swirled around him, further disorienting his fractured senses. He strained with every ounce of his being to stir, to produce even the slightest whisper, but silence engulfed him once more as he succumbed to the encroaching darkness. When the light returned, he couldn't tell how much later it was. Days, weeks, months? It was sharper this time, more defined, cutting through the haze. With a Herculean effort, he willed his dormant muscles to react. A sickening, wet gurgle erupted from his throat, as if something viscous had clogged his windpipe. He choked, a violent, hacking cough tearing through him. A shadowy figure swiftly glided past his field of vision. Then more appeared, their faces a blur of hurried motion. He blinked furiously, struggling to bring them into focus. Hands hovered over him, making precise adjustments, checking vital signs, performing unknown medical procedures. "Can you hear me, Mr. Thorne?" A man's voice cut through the noise, clear and commanding. "Mr. Thorne." The name resonated with an alien unfamiliarity. It held no meaning for him. Still, he managed a minuscule, almost imperceptible nod. As the world slowly sharpened into painful clarity, he realized he was lying in a sterile hospital bed. The room buzzed with a low, constant hum of activity. Medical professionals moved with practiced efficiency, systematically removing equipment, scrutinizing monitors, exchanging hushed instructions. A gentle nurse carefully peeled adhesive tape from his face, then skillfully extracted a tube from his throat. A glorious rush of unimpeded air flooded his lungs. He gasped, drawing his first true, unassisted breath in what felt like an eternity. "How long?" he croaked, his voice raspy and thin. "That's an excellent sign," someone nearby said, their tone reassuring. He looked down at his own body, a stranger to him, and saw a tangle of wires connected to his chest and 4 needles inserted into his arm, a catheter that brought a wave of confused discomfort, and a tight cuff periodically squeezing his arm. A flat-screen television mounted on the wall flickered with a news segment. The scrolling headline prominently featured President Sterling. "Sterling," he rasped, his voice weak and hoarse. Wasn't President Caldwell in office? A wave of profound disorientation washed over him. "How long has it been?" he managed, barely a whisper. A doctor, a man with a kind yet weary face, reviewed a thick file at the foot of his bed. "As far as we can ascertain, you've been in an unresponsive state for nearly a decade. Since 2009, Mr. Thorne. 10 years. Ethan blinked, the information hitting him like a physical blow. His mind reeled, a chaotic maelstrom of confusion. Why could he recall nothing? And why did they relentlessly call him Mr. Thorne? The doctor offered a gentle, sympathetic nod. You are stable for the moment. We will conduct several scans, remove that feeding tube, and then transfer you to a recovery room. Physical therapy will be the subsequent step. The restrictive restraints binding his wrists and ankles were finally unfastened. He felt the oppressive pressure gradually recede. A nurse stepped discreetly aside to make a phone call. Try to relax, the doctor added, his voice soft. We are attempting to contact your family. Family? His thoughts raced, a whirlwind of fragmented memories. Who were they calling? And, more crucially, who was he truly? Family? He had a family. He remembered that with sudden, painful clarity. A wife, a daughter. Chloe would be 18 now, on the cusp of university. His wife, Vivian. A surge of bitterness, cold and sharp, pierced him at the mere thought of her. The doctor offered a small, encouraging smile. Your vitals are robust. Let us get you settled. Ethan turned his head slightly. Doctor, who is Thorne? You are, the doctor replied gently. It appears you're experiencing some memory loss, which is not at all uncommon given your circumstances. We will arrange for a specialist to assist you. But he wasn't Thorne. He was Ethan Wilson, born in 1972. His parents were Arthur and Eleanor. He had an older brother, Brandon. At 18, he had enlisted in the Army, training meticulously as a sniper. He served courageously in perilous hot zones, including Operation Desert Storm. Discharged honorably in '94, he returned to Pacific Estate and earned a degree in criminal justice. He joined the Los Angeles Metro Police Department, LAMPD, in '96, achieving the rank of sharpshooter by '97. In '99, he married Vivian Jackson. Their daughter, Jennifer, or Chloe, was born the following year. Life, for a time, had seemed idyllic. Then, in late 2008, everything catastrophically unraveled when he won a substantial lottery prize. Around the same period, he made the devastating discovery that Vivian was involved in an affair with his own brother, Brandon. Mercifully, his best friend, Alex, a seasoned financial expert, helped him discreetly deposit the winnings into a secure offshore account. Alex also connected him with a formidable lawyer who held a deep disdain for infidelity, especially when it involved family. Together, they meticulously gathered irrefutable evidence, damning photographs, incriminating videos, unequivocal proof of the sordid affair. Ethan had intended to confront them, to expose their deceit, but then something terrible had happened. He couldn't quite grasp the specifics. His next conscious memory was awakening in this sterile hospital room a decade later. He slumped back against the soft pillow, his eyes fixed on the television screen. Then, something on the news segment seized his attention, chilling him to the bone. Brandon Wilson, his brother, was on screen, boldly announcing his candidacy for public office in Capital City. Vivian stood proudly beside him, a picture of domestic bliss. And next to them, a teenage girl, a mirror image of his beloved Chloe. And I pledge to restore true ethics and transparency to Capital City, Brandon declared, his voice resonating with feigned sincerity. Reporters applauded enthusiastically. Brandon turned and, with an utterly sickening familiarity, kissed Vivian's cheek. The news anchor chimed in, her voice brimming with detached professionalism. Brandon Wilson, pictured here with his wife and daughter, officially enters the race a decade after the tragic, untimely death of his brother, Ethan. Ethan froze, a cold wave of horror washing over him. Shooting death? But he wasn't dead. And Chloe, his daughter, not Brandon's, was standing there, a prop in their monstrous charade. A profound nausea churned in his gut. They had buried him, stolen his very name, usurped his life, and lied to his own child. The memories preceding the hospital were still a fragmented blur, but the raw, unadulterated rage and searing sense of betrayal were suddenly crystal clear, sharper than any blade. And somewhere, deep within his very core, Ethan knew, with absolute certainty, that this was far from over. Ethan had endured the better part of his life, languishing in the oppressive shadow of his older brother, Brandon. A relentless bully in every conceivable sense, Brandon had a perverse knack for stealing everything he desired, whether he genuinely needed it or not. Credit, girlfriends, money, recognition. The most infuriating aspect was that their parents, Arthur and Eleanor, consistently sided with Brandon, regardless of how transparent his deceptions. Ethan was perpetually cast as the scapegoat, the family's designated black sheep. Finally, completely fed up with the relentless injustice, he enlisted in the army directly after high school, not breathing a word to anyone. When he finally called home from boot camp, his father's furious roar had rattled his ear. Ethan didn't hold back. "I am an adult now," he declared, his voice firm, "and you shouldn't expect to hear from me again." He snapped the phone shut, cutting the connection with a decisive click. He remained true to his word, not seeing or speaking to them for years. It wasn't until 1997, when they unexpectedly appeared, uninvited, at his police academy graduation after the LAMPD had notified them of the ceremony. He spotted them in the bustling crowd, Brandon among them. After the formalities concluded, they intercepted him. His father attempted a strange show of pride. His mother pleaded for civility, and Brandon feigned confusion regarding Ethan's apparent animosity. "You systematically stole everything from me and deliberately cast me as the villain," Ethan stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "I built this life entirely on my own, and none of you are ever going to ruin it." They were visibly stunned. Ethan was no longer the quiet, submissive kid they had so easily manipulated. He was a hardened soldier who had witnessed the grim realities of war. "I have taken lives," he said plainly, his gaze unwavering. "I do not tolerate nonsense from anyone now." Then, he simply turned and walked away. He did not see them again until his wedding to Vivian, a woman he had met at a police department event. She worked for the public defender's office and, unbeknownst to him until the reception, was soon hired at his father's prestigious law firm. Brandon was already present, his customary smirk plastered across his face, looking as if he owned the entire room. "Mind if I have a dance with my lovely new sister-in-law?" Brandon asked, his smirk intact. Ethan's blood ran cold. He pulled his brother aside, his voice low and dangerous. "Back off. She is not one of the girls you used to steal from me. She is my wife." Brandon laughed, a mocking, dismissive sound, until Ethan added, his voice a chilling whisper, "I was a sniper in the army. I could put a bullet through you from 1,000 yards, and you'd never know what hit you." Brandon's smirk vanished abruptly. "Is that a threat?" he managed, his voice suddenly thin. "No," Ethan replied, his eyes cold and unwavering. "It's a promise." Back at the table, Brandon, with uncharacteristic politeness, invited Vivian to dance. Ethan reluctantly allowed it, but his eyes never left them. His father attempted to smooth over the palpable tension, stating they were proud of him. "You allowed him to humiliate me for years," Ethan countered, his voice flat. His mother implored him to forgive and forget, to somehow become a family again. "We'll see," Ethan replied, the words tinged with doubt. "But it begins with you keeping Brandon far away from Vivian." Arthur nodded solemnly. "I will ensure it." As the newlyweds departed for their honeymoon in Oasis City, Ethan glanced back, catching sight of Brandon and his father engaged in a quiet, intense conversation. He wanted to believe things would be different, but deep down, a cynical voice told him he knew better. In the car, Vivian broke the strained silence. "Your brother is quite charming," she remarked thoughtfully. "He asked me to call him Bobby. Why don't you?" Ethan stared out the window, the cityscape blurring by. "Because he stopped being my brother a very long time ago." Ethan eventually opened up to Vivian about his tumultuous past, laying bare the painful history of how his older brother, Brandon, had relentlessly taken what was never his. His possessions, his fleeting girlfriends, even the precious approval of their parents. Whenever something went awry, Ethan bore the brunt of the blame, while Brandon invariably walked away untarnished. So, when I finally had the chance to leave, I seized it, he explained, his voice hollow. I built a life entirely without them. Vivian was visibly stunned. "I had no idea," she confessed, her eyes wide. "They never even mentioned you. If I'd known, I never would have applied to their firm." "It's all right," Ethan reassured her. "Just keep your guard up. Brandon's charm is merely a deceptive mask. Do not fall for it. I would never hurt you," she promised, her gaze earnest. Ethan wanted to believe her, and for a time, he did, though a flicker of his ingrained caution remained. He found himself subtly observing her choice of work attire, noting how late she stayed out, analyzing her demeanor upon returning home. 2 years into their marriage, their daughter, Chloe, was born, and Vivian seemed to embody the role of the perfect mother. Things felt stable, even genuinely happy. Still, he maintained a calculated distance from his family, even as he slowly, cautiously, permitted them limited contact with Chloe. Trust, for Ethan, never came easily. In late 2008, Ethan met Alex Miller at a police seminar in Sunset City. Alex was a former Army veteran, now a veritable jack of all trades, private investigator, financial guru, and more. They instantly clicked, a shared understanding forged by their military backgrounds. That Christmas, Ethan purchased matching advanced smartphones, so he and Vivian could always stay in touch. A year later, while driving home, a text message arrived from her number. "Had a truly wonderful time tonight, my love. See you tomorrow." Ethan froze, his blood running cold. Vivian was supposed to be working late. And my love? A sickening suspicion coiled in his gut. Brandon. They worked closely, far too closely. He pulled off the freeway, his mind reeling, and immediately called Alex. "Do you think you could assist me as a private investigator?" Ethan asked, his voice strained. "Sure," Alex replied, sensing the gravity in Ethan's tone. "But do not do anything reckless. Let me uncover something solid first." Ethan agreed, the words tasting like ash. But that night, he wept alone in his car, the bitter taste of impending betrayal already in his mouth. Even now, recalling that moment, the memory struck him with devastating force, the grief as raw as if it had happened moments ago. A nurse's gentle voice snapped him back to the present. "Are you all right, Mr. Thorne?" she asked, her eyes softening as she noticed the tears coursing down his cheeks. "I'm fine," he croaked, his voice thick with emotion. "Could I please have some water?" She brought it promptly, her movements efficient and kind. Just as he began to sip, the doctor entered. "Excellent news," the doctor announced, a pleased smile on his face. "Your tests indicate a remarkable recovery. We will remove your feeding tube immediately and transfer you to your own private room." Soon he was settled in a quiet, private room, savoring real food for the very first time in 10 arduous years. As he absently watched the news, a soft knock came at the door. "Come in," he said weakly. A man entered, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Johnny boy, remember me?" It took a second, a fleeting flicker of recognition. "Alex." Alex nodded, pulling a chair closer and setting a worn leather briefcase beside him. "How are you feeling, old friend?" "Better," Ethan replied, but profoundly confused. "Everyone keeps calling me Thorne." And you just call me Johnny. What? Alex hesitated, his gaze solemn. Because Ethan Wilson officially perished 10 years ago. You're John Thorne now. Ethan blinked, the revelation hitting him with the force of a physical blow. What? But I'm alive. According to official records, Ethan was fatally wounded during a home invasion. Alex explained, his voice low. How much do you recall from that time? Not much, Ethan admitted, his memory still a frustrating blank. Alex opened his laptop, its screen glowing in the dim room. Let me show you. He clicked a file, and a video began to play. Ethan watched in stunned, horrified silence as Vivian, Brandon, and his father, Arthur, appeared on screen, completely undressed in a hotel room. After their sordid encounter, they calmly discussed how Brandon would liquidate Ethan the following day and meticulously stage it to appear as a break-in. Then came the second video. Ethan was tied to a chair, his mouth gagged. Brandon and Vivian were in bed, openly mocking him, their faces twisted with cruel satisfaction. Brandon grabbed a rifle, its cold metal glinting. I took your wife, your daughter's mine, and now I'm taking your life. Brandon sneered before firing the weapon. The screen went black. They left you for dead, Alex said, his voice grim. But you survived. Barely. Why didn't you take this evidence to the police? Ethan demanded, his voice thick with rage. I tried, Alex replied, but the federal authorities instructed me to bury it. Your father and brother were already under investigation for organized crime connections. This incident gave them immense leverage over the Wilsons, which they exploited. How did I survive? Ethan asked, his mind still reeling. Pure luck and terrible aim, Alex responded. You were in a deep coma, so the feds shrewdly staged your death and replaced your body with a carefully chosen lookalike. If you had been conscious, you would be in witness protection right now, living a life of anonymity. And Vivian, Ethan asked, his voice laced with venom, was she at the funeral? She wept profusely the entire time, Alex said with a bitter, cynical laugh. Played the grieving widow perfectly, a truly Oscar-worthy performance. What about Chloe? Ethan asked, his heart aching. She's about to start West Coast University, Alex said. She's sharp. She figured things out on her own and blames her mother for everything. She reminds me so much of you. Ethan shook his head, a mixture of pride and profound sadness welling up. Who paid for all of this? The hospital, the doctors, the staged death. You did, Alex said. Remember that lottery prize you won? You asked me to manage it. I invested it offshore, diversified it. It's grown significantly. You are more than financially secure. Ethan exhaled a ragged breath. Thank you, Alex. Truly. My pleasure, Johnny boy, Alex replied. So what now? I want to see my daughter, Ethan declared, his voice firm. And then I want revenge. Not just for me, but for Chloe. For everything they took. Alex smiled, a dangerous glint in his eyes. I anticipated you would say that, but do not waste it on simple bullets. Let's make them suffer, make them hurt in ways they never imagined. What do you have in mind? Ethan asked, leaning forward, a spark igniting within him. Alex leaned inconspiratorially, outlining a meticulous, calculated plan. By the time Alex departed, Ethan, now officially John Thorne, felt a surge of energy course through him, a renewed purpose. He accepted his new name, not just as an identity, but as a burning declaration of war. They would all pay, every single one of them. As he steadily regained his strength over the ensuing days, memories, once stubbornly elusive, began to return in disjointed flashes, then in more complete, terrifying sequences. His mind incessantly circled back to the final, horrifying moments before the shooting. The last, brutal chapter of the life he once knew, and the prelude to the war he was about to ignite. It was December 2008. After receiving that incriminating, soul-crushing text message from Vivian, Ethan gave Alex the unequivocal green light to install discreet, hidden surveillance equipment throughout his home and even within Vivian's car. Alex, ever the professional, did not share the specific details, and Ethan, in his profound despair, did not ask. What he didn't explicitly know, he reasoned, could not further betray him. 2 weeks later, Alex summoned him to his office, his demeanor grave. "Are you ready for this?" Alex asked as Ethan walked in, his expression drawn. "I don't know," Ethan muttered, his voice barely audible. Alex handed him a thick, manila envelope. Inside were dozens of stark, irrefutable photographs of Vivian and Brandon, caught in flagrante delicto in various hotel rooms and even in their law office. Worse, some of the photos unveiled a truly sickening, almost unbelievable truth. Vivian had not only been with Brandon, but also with Arthur, his own father. One particularly vile image even depicted Ethan's mother, Eleanor, actively assisting them. Ethan felt a wave of profound nausea, barely suppressing the urge to vomit. "There's more," Alex said, his voice tight, as he played a video on his laptop. On the screen, Vivian was engaged in a depraved act with Arthur, while Brandon took her from behind. When they finished, they laughed, clinking glasses, and casually discussed how Ethan remained utterly oblivious to their monstrous deception. "We've been at this for 6 years now," Brandon boasted, his face twisted in a smug grin. "He's never suspected a thing." Arthur, his father, then chillingly suggested they inform Ethan on Christmas Day. If he proved uncooperative, they would resort to Plan B, bringing in someone from the Atlantic seaboard to take him out. Eleanor, they shamelessly claimed, had conceived this horrific idea. Ethan stared blankly at the screen, his mind struggling to process the enormity of the betrayal. "My entire family," he whispered, "they're all in on it." "Yes," Alex confirmed, his voice laced with sympathy. "And it unfortunately gets worse. They've been meeting weekly, coordinating their efforts. It's escalating rapidly." Alex handed him a business card. "I've arranged for you to meet with Eleanor Vance, a top-tier divorce attorney. She's already reviewed the initial evidence." "Call her," Alex urged. Ethan called that very day. When he arrived at Eleanor Vance's elegant office, she wasted no time. "Mr. Wilson, this is genuinely one of the most disturbing cases I have ever encountered," she stated, her expression grave. "What outcome are you hoping to achieve?" "Full custody of my daughter," Ethan articulated, his voice hollow, "if she is even truly mine. No alimony for Vivian. And I want to relentlessly pursue Brandon and the rest of them for their depravity." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "Pacific Estate is a no-fault divorce state. We will file under irreconcilable differences and strategically use this overwhelming evidence during settlement negotiations. Custody is notoriously difficult to secure in this state, but with her substantial income, we might just be able to avoid spousal support. As for the others, there's no direct legal avenue for emotional damages here, but I will explore every possible angle to make their lives as miserable as possible." "When should we serve her the papers?" Ethan asked, his voice steady, devoid of any hesitation. "Christmas Day," he declared, "at my parents' house." Eleanor smirked faintly, a glint of steel in her eyes. "Divorce for Christmas. How delightfully festive. I will also file for a restraining order simultaneously." Driving home, Ethan felt utterly numb, the world around him a distant, muted blur. He simply couldn't fathom that the people closest to him, his own family, had conspired so maliciously behind his back. Vivian, observing his distant demeanor, sensed his profound emotional upheaval. "What's wrong, darling?" she asked, her voice laced with feigned concern. A friend of mine just discovered his wife cheated on him. Ethan replied, his voice flat, emotionless. I would never do that to you, she said, too quickly, too vehemently. He looked at her, his eyes cold and unwavering. I certainly hope not. Later that night, she inquired if he was coming to bed. He declined, unable to bear the thought of her touch. She left him, her face etched with a bewildered confusion he knew was entirely false. The next morning, she gently woke him on the living room couch. You never came up last night, she pouted. I was hoping for a little attention. I had some pressing matters on my mind, he countered. Don't forget, we have the Christmas party at the firm this afternoon. Be there by 4:30. And perhaps try to smile, all right? He nodded mechanically as she leaned in to kiss his cheek. He barely reacted, his body rigid. That afternoon, at the firm's extravagant Christmas party, Brandon greeted him, clearly already intoxicated. Look who finally decided to grace us with his presence, he slurred, a condescending smirk on his face. Ethan ignored the alcoholic drink offered and instead opted for a bottle of water. What? Too good to drink with us now? Brandon mocked, his voice thick with contempt. I'm on duty, Ethan replied, his gaze unwavering. And you had better not drive, he warned, his voice low and firm. What? Going to arrest me, brother dear? Brandon laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Only if you give me a valid reason. Arthur, his father, sauntered over. I'd probably arrest him too, he said, chuckling heartily, completely oblivious to the venomous undertones. Glad you made it, son. Vivian, ever the devoted wife, wrapped her arm possessively around Ethan. Relax, darling. You're acting as if someone's out to get you. Officers in uniform always have a target on their back, he replied, his eyes scanning the opulent room, catching the pitying, guilty glances from colleagues. Everyone knew. He subtly slipped away to the restroom and found Brandon already there, washing his hands. Ethan noticed the flashy, expensive timepiece on Brandon's wrist. New watch, Ethan asked, feigning casual interest. A gift, Brandon said proudly, extending his wrist for Ethan to admire. Ethan flipped it over. The intricate engraving read, Merry Christmas with love, Vivian and Chloe. He handed it back, forcing a strained smile. Nice, he managed, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. He exited before Brandon could utter another word. Minutes later, he located Vivian and Arthur chatting animatedly. I need to go, he announced abruptly. Vivian moved to kiss him, but he simply walked off without a word, leaving her standing there, bewildered. That night, he ended his shift, grabbed 2 beers from a quiet bar, and headed home. He sat in the suffocating silence, asking himself the same agonizing question over and over again. Why did she do it? Late December 2008, when Ethan finally walked into their spacious home, Vivian was already there, her face contorted with fury. Where in the world have you been? She snapped, her voice sharp. Finish my shift, he replied, his voice flat, grabbed a beer. Why do you care, Vivian? Because I'm your wife, she retorted, her voice rising, and I love you. He stared at her, his eyes cold, devoid of warmth. That expensive timepiece Brandon wears, that Rolex, he began, his voice dangerously low. Was that your gift to him? Vivian froze, her eyes widening in sudden panic. You saw it? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Yeah, Ethan said, his voice laced with pure contempt. Inscribed from your 2 girls. Tell me, Vivian, is Chloe even truly mine? He's her uncle, she pleaded, her voice cracking. That's all. Don't insult my intelligence. Ethan seethed, stepping closer. I witnessed the way your coworkers looked at me today. They know everything. They pity me. It's not what you think, she whispered, her gaze dropping. "Oh, I think it is exactly what I think," he countered, his voice dripping with icy fury. "And if you're wondering what I desire for Christmas, Vivian, it is your signature." "On what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The divorce papers," he stated, his voice flat and final. "I don't want a divorce," she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. "I love you, Ethan." "Then why?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Did you sleep with Brandon, my own brother? Or my father, for that matter? How long has this sickening charade been going on?" Vivian finally dropped her gaze, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Since I joined the firm," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "And yes, with your dad, too. For about a year." "Is Chloe mine?" he pressed, needing to hear the answer, no matter how painful. "Yes," she insisted, her voice desperate. "I will need irrefutable proof," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "How dare you?" she began, her voice rising in a defiant cry. "No," he cut her off, his voice a thunderclap. "How dare you? I loved you, Vivian. I cherished you. I took care of you. I painstakingly raised our daughter while you were too preoccupied screwing my entire family. I am done. We are finished." Ethan packed a few essential items and temporarily moved into his office at the LAMPD. He kept to himself, withdrawing from the world, focusing solely on Chloe. She was the only innocent, untainted part of the chaotic maelstrom swirling around him. Alex called him soon after. "You've stirred a veritable hornet's nest, old friend," he said, his voice gravely serious. He showed Ethan another video from Arthur's office. Vivian, Arthur, and Brandon were once again undressed, their conversation chillingly casual. "He knows," Vivian informed them, her voice a detached monotone. "So what?" Brandon shrugged, completely unconcerned. "He filed for divorce." "Not yet," Arthur interjected, his voice firm, "but he will soon." Arthur leaned forward, his face grim. "Then we educate him. Either he complies with our terms, or he gets utterly ruined." Alex paused the video. "I've already transmitted this damning footage to your attorney and formally notified your supervisor at the LAMPD. You now have constant patrol coverage. Also, here is a key to a safe, discreet apartment. Lay low for a while, Ethan." On Christmas morning, Vivian, surprisingly composed, asked, "Are you coming to the house, Ethan?" "I'll be there," Ethan replied, expertly avoiding her attempt at a kiss. "Save it for your lovers." When she and Chloe departed, Ethan meticulously suited up in his LAMPD uniform, packed the remaining essentials from their house, and called the process server. They met just a block from the Wilson family's sprawling estate. Ethan rang the doorbell. Arthur answered, his face registering surprise. "Ethan, you don't need to knock, son." "Official business," Ethan replied, his voice cold, devoid of any familial warmth. "Have Vivian come to the door." When Vivian appeared, her face a mask of confusion, the process server stepped forward and handed her the thick envelope. "You served me on Christmas?" she cried out, her voice filled with outrage. "Better than your plan for me," Ethan retorted, his voice chillingly calm. Chloe, standing nearby, began to cry, her small face crumpled in confusion. "What's happening, Daddy?" "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Ethan said softly, his voice thick with emotion, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Your mom doesn't love me anymore, but I will always, always love you." Chloe, her face suddenly contorted with furious indignation, turned on her mother. "I hate you," she screamed, before tearing away and running off. Arthur stepped forward, his face red with barely suppressed rage. "How dare you ruin our Christmas, Ethan? You should be profoundly grateful I am not arresting you both right now," Ethan replied, handing over a second envelope containing carefully curated evidence, meticulously excluding anything illegally obtained. Eleanor and Brandon joined them at the door, their expressions ranging from shock to simmering anger. "I know everything," Ethan stated, his voice flat and authoritative. "You are all named in the protective order. Violate it, and I will personally arrest you." Brandon, his eyes blazing, lunged forward. "I ought to kick your— Don't touch him, Brandon, or I'll break your arm," Arthur barked, fiercely restraining his son. "You blew it, Ethan," Arthur growled, his voice thick with fury. "You could have been part of something truly great." "I thought I already was," Ethan said, his voice laced with bitter irony, before turning and walking away. "Merry Christmas." He drove directly to the secure apartment Alex had arranged and spent the day alone, drowning his profound pain and sorrow in the burning embrace of whiskey. A few days later, Arthur called. "I want to see you today, Ethan. My office. We need to talk." Ethan laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Call my attorney, Arthur." He contacted Eleanor Vance, who reluctantly agreed to meet with Arthur, Brandon, and Vivian at her office. At the meeting, Eleanor, ever the pragmatist, immediately cut to the chase. "Why are you here now?" Arthur slid a meticulously drafted contract across the polished table. "We want him to cancel the divorce proceedings and sign this agreement." Eleanor read through the document, her expression darkening, then scoffed, a look of utter disbelief on her face. "You seriously expect him to permit his wife to continue sleeping with both of you? Her brother-in-law and her father-in-law? You are completely out of your minds. Get out of my office, all of you, before I call security and have you forcibly removed." Arthur stood, his face flushed scarlet with impotent rage. "I will destroy you, Ethan," he snarled, his voice thick with venom. "Threatening a police officer is a serious felony, Mr. Wilson." Eleanor snapped, her voice sharp and uncompromising. They departed, their faces contorted with fury. Ethan thanked Eleanor, a genuine gratitude in his voice. Later, he called Vivian to arrange a time to pick up his remaining personal belongings. "No one will be home," she assured him, her voice surprisingly calm. He believed her. As he stepped into the house, a sharp, searing sting erupted on his neck. Then, everything went utterly, terrifyingly dark. May 6, 2019. The last thing Ethan remembered before the absolute darkness consumed him was struggling fiercely in a chair, his mouth taped shut, hearing someone mention getting rid of him. Then a blinding flash of white light, an agonizing surge of pain and oblivion. Now, months later, John Thorne had fully recovered. His arduous rehabilitation had progressed far better than anyone had anticipated. His memories, once fragmented and elusive, had returned with a chilling clarity. His physical strength had also been painstakingly restored, and the skilled doctors had performed just enough reconstructive work to subtly alter his appearance. Scars remained, telltale reminders of his ordeal, but the face staring back at him from the mirror was no longer that of Ethan Wilson. Alex had meticulously arranged every detail. Colored contact lenses to cleverly disguise John's eyes, a small, fully furnished apartment to serve as his new sanctuary, even a sleek new SUV and bank cards linked directly to the offshore account holding his lottery winnings. John was deeply impressed and profoundly grateful for Alex's unwavering loyalty and foresight. They had a comprehensive plan, carefully constructed. Revenge would wait, a simmering fire, until he had reunited with Chloe. That particular morning, John drove to the serene cemetery, a cup of hot coffee clutched in his hand, and waited patiently. Right on time, Chloe appeared, a solitary figure in the quiet landscape, stopping reverently at a specific headstone. He approached her quietly, his heart pounding. "Did you know my dad?" she asked, her voice soft and hopeful. I did, he replied, his voice carefully neutral. We served together. My name is John Thorne. She shook his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. Chloe Wilson. It's truly nice to meet you, Mr. Thorne. He was a hero, she added, her eyes misting with unshed tears. I come here every Tuesday. My mom doesn't know. Why not? He probed gently. She married my uncle not long after Dad passed away during that so-called burglary, Chloe explained, a hint of bitterness in her voice. They said it was a break-in, but I never truly believed it. He was too sharp, too careful. What do you aspire to do with your life, Chloe? John asked, genuinely interested. West Coast University in the fall, she replied, her eyes bright with determination. I want to become a prosecutor for my dad, to fight for justice. He smiled through his own welling tears, a profound sense of pride swelling in his chest. He will be incredibly proud of you, Chloe. Can we stay in touch, Mr. Thorne? She asked, a tentative hope in her voice. You feel familiar and safe. They exchanged phone numbers. As she walked away, he noticed, with a fleeting pang of alarm, that she quietly collected his discarded coffee cup and meticulously jotted down his license plate number. John didn't let on that he saw it. Later that day, at Elysian Gardens, John activated a burner phone, its voice changer meticulously engaged. He called Vivian. Why did you liquidate me? He demanded, his voice distorted, then abruptly hung up. She froze, her blood running cold. The voice sounded uncannily like Ethan's, but it couldn't be, right? John then sent Brandon a chilling photo, himself positioned outside Brandon's office, with a set of crosshairs superimposed precisely over Brandon's groin. The accompanying message was stark, remember my promise. Afterward, both burner phones were dismantled into their component parts and scattered in separate, distant trash bins, leaving no trace. Brandon stared at the photo, a primal fear seizing him. He vividly recalled that exact, chilling warning from Ethan at his wedding. I can blow your balls off from 1,000 yards. But Ethan was dead. Or was he? The corrupt couple initially dismissed it as a crude prank by political adversaries, until another ominous message arrived 3 days later. This time, Vivian received a chilling screenshot from the surveillance video, Brandon pulling the trigger. The caption was succinct and terrifying. Your sins will find you out. Brandon's phone rang next. A voice, distorted and whispering, said, Remember, Brandon, I can still shoot. Again, John meticulously disposed of the phones. Back at his secure apartment, he laid low, meticulously studying 10 years of news and technological advancements, while Alex continued to tirelessly dig deeper into Brandon's increasingly precarious life. Then his phone rang. John Thorne. He answered, his voice calm. Hi, it's Chloe. Remember me? Of course, he replied, a warmth spreading through him. Can we meet tomorrow morning at the cemetery? She asked, her voice tinged with urgency. Absolutely. 6 o'clock. Yes, she confirmed. I really need someone to talk to. John's heart ached as he ended the call, a deep foreboding settling over him. He wondered what crisis his daughter faced and how much she already suspected. The next morning, John sat quietly on a weathered bench by the grave, waiting, the crisp morning air doing little to calm his nerves. Chloe arrived precisely on time, her expression tight with unspoken tension. He greeted her gently, his voice soft. She didn't speak immediately, simply opened her purse, retrieved a thick envelope, and handed it to him. I remember the last time I truly saw my dad, she began, her voice strained. After the funeral, Mom married Brandon. He insisted I call him Dad, but I never did. I always knew in my heart he wasn't. And now I have irrefutable proof. John stared at her, his mind reeling. I secretly collected your coffee cup and a discarded cigarette, but after we met, she admitted, her gaze unwavering. DNA confirmed it. You and my father, a 99.9% match. John exhaled slowly, a profound relief washing over him, coupled with a deep, abiding pride. Alex was right, he said, a faint smile touching his lips. You truly are sharp, princess. You're going to be an incredible prosecutor someday. She smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. So, who are you really? She asked, her voice hushed. And if you're alive, who is buried there? The Ethan you knew died 10 years ago, he said, his voice carefully measured. Now I go by John Thorne. The federal authorities staged my death. They claimed it was a home invasion. But that wasn't the truth, was it? He shook his head slowly. Not even close. I want to know everything, she insisted, her eyes brimming with tears. Every single detail, no matter how painful. It's far worse than you can possibly imagine, he warned. I don't care, she declared, her voice firm. John nodded, his resolve hardening. So, Brandon and Vivian, he began, are things tense at home? They're rattled, she confirmed, paranoid. Weird calls, strange texts. They're losing their minds. There's more, isn't there, Chloe? He asked, sensing her hesitation. She hesitated again, then whispered, her voice barely audible. Brandon has been molesting me since I was 13. John froze, an uncontrollable, searing rage boiling in his chest. Did you report it, Chloe? Twice, she replied, tears now streaming freely down her face. The LAMPD officers came, but Mom vehemently denied everything. They beat me, locked me in my room, and threatened me with far worse if I ever told anyone again. What's your plan for today? He asked, trying to regain his composure. Nothing. School's out. I just can't stand being in that house anymore. Come with me, he said, his voice firm and gentle. I'll show you what truly happened. Chloe agreed, her face etched with a desperate hope, and John immediately called Alex. Meet me at the apartment, he instructed. Plans have irrevocably changed. She followed John back to his secluded apartment. It wasn't luxurious, but she smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. It feels like home, she murmured. Dad just needs a little decorating touch. They sat down together, hot coffee steaming between them. John hesitated. The footage is deeply disturbing, Chloe. Are you absolutely certain you want to see it? I need to, she said, her voice resolute. He played the video. Vivian, Brandon, and Arthur plotting his murder, followed by the horrifying recording of the shooting itself. Chloe watched, stunned, tears silently streaming down her face. I can't believe it, she whispered, her voice choked with sobs. They actually planned to liquidate you. A soft knock at the door. John opened it to reveal Alex, his expression grim. Meet my daughter, John said, his voice heavy. She knows everything now, and she has been hurt beyond measure. Alex's face darkened, a cold fury in his eyes. Then it is time to escalate, he declared. He turned to Chloe. Would you be willing to assist us? Absolutely, she said, her voice firm. I'm 18 now, and Brandon hasn't touched me since I told him I would break his nose and his balls. John smiled with profound pride, a flicker of dark satisfaction in his eyes. Good, Alex said. We need eyes inside that house. You can plant cameras if you are absolutely certain it is safe for you. Chloe nodded, her jaw set with determination. Let's do it. Alex looked at John. It might be time to approach the press, John. I will arrange something through my contacts. Can we trust anyone in the district attorney's office? John asked, his voice laced with cynicism. Alex shook his head. Not anymore. It will drag this out for years, tie it up in bureaucracy. If we want true justice, it is entirely on us. John hesitated, then, with a deep breath, agreed. Fine, set it up. Perhaps we should bring in some additional help from the Atlantic seaboard. Quiet, fast, no spotlight. Understood, Alex said, a grim smile playing on his lips. John turned to Chloe. You plant the cameras, follow Alex's instructions implicitly, and if you feel unsafe for even a second, call us immediately. You will always have a place here with me. No questions asked. No questions, she confirmed, her voice thick with emotion as she hugged her father tightly. I am so incredibly proud of you, Princess, John said, struggling to hold back his own tears. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Princess, he whispered, holding her close. The days flew by with a dizzying speed. Jean continued his relentless pressure campaign. Anonymous calls, cryptic, unsettling texts, all designed to push Brandon and Vivian closer to the brink of their sanity. Meanwhile, Chloe, meticulously following Alex's detailed instructions, covertly planted hidden cameras and microphones throughout the house. Even the landlines were tapped. Nothing transpired within that house without John and Alex knowing, seeing, and hearing. They swiftly gathered a trove of compromising evidence. Shady calls with influential political backers, explosive private arguments, and quiet, growing panic. Alex diligently filtered through the vast amount of data, separating the insignificant noise from the truly damning information. Soon, Alex reached out to an old, trusted contact, Sarah Davies, a seasoned reporter at the Golden State Gazette. She called John directly. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice sharp and professional. I was informed you have a story truly worth hearing. Can we meet? I do, John replied, his voice calm, and I have irrefutable video evidence to substantiate it. They scheduled a meeting for 2 p.m. at the Golden State Gazette's bustling office. John arrived precisely on time, found parking, and made his way inside the imposing building. Sarah greeted him, a sharp-looking woman about his age, no rings adorning her fingers, her gaze intelligent and piercing. Call me Sarah, she said, offering a professional smile. Coffee, always, John replied, a small smile playing on his lips. Once they were comfortably seated with steaming mugs of coffee, she immediately got to the point. So, Alex tells me there is much more to Brandon Wilson than meets the public eye. There is, John confirmed. But first, how much do you truly know about Ethan Wilson's death? Officially, he died during a home invasion, correct? Sarah asked, her brow furrowed in thought. Allow me to show you something, John said, opening his laptop. He played 2 clips, one of Vivian, Arthur, and Brandon plotting Ethan's murder, and another of the shocking shooting itself. Sarah sat in stunned, horrified silence when the videos concluded, her face pale. Are you interested now, Ms. Davies? He asked, his voice low. Absolutely, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Where on earth did you obtain these? I will explain, John promised. But first, what is considered on or off the record? You tell me when something is off, Sarah said, her eyes fixed on him. Fair enough, John agreed. Off the record, Ethan Wilson did not die. I am him. The federal authorities gave me a new identity after the shooting, as they were in the process of building a case against Arthur and Brandon that subsequently went cold. As far as the world knows, I am dead. Sarah blinked, processing the impossible information. You were Ethan Wilson, and the world simply moved on. Check the court filings, John instructed. I filed for divorce in December 2008. The papers were served on Christmas Day. The shooting occurred just after New Year's. You will also discover a marital agreement drafted by Vivian's lawyers, Brandon and Arthur Wilson themselves. John meticulously walked her through the remaining details, carefully omitting anything overly sensitive or incriminating that could jeopardize his position. Then he presented her with one final, undeniable piece of evidence: the DNA test Chloe had secretly conducted. Sarah read the result, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You truly are him. There's so much more to this story, isn't there, Mr. Thorne?" John asked. "Want to hear it over dinner?" Sarah smiled, a hint of something more than professional interest in her eyes. "Maybe. I will let you know." The very next day, she called him. "Dinner sounds excellent," she said, her voice warm, "but there's a slight twist. I'm attending a political fundraiser tonight. Brandon will be there. Would you care to join me?" "Sounds incredibly risky," John conceded, a thrill running through him, "but absolutely." After obtaining the necessary details, John called Alex. "Are you insane?" Alex exclaimed, his voice incredulous. "Relax," John chuckled. "I am supposed to be dead, remember? Just allow Sarah to ask the questions," Alex warned, his voice grim. John also called Chloe to give her a heads up about the evening. "Thanks, Dad," she said, her voice excited. "I'll be there too. I'll pretend we've never met." That night, impeccably dressed in a sharp suit, John picked up Sarah. She looked stunning in her elegant gown, radiating confidence. "You look absolutely amazing, Sarah," he said, his eyes admiring her. "You clean up remarkably well yourself, cowboy," she replied with a playful smile. At the exclusive event, they passed through the entrance line. Sarah handed over her invitation with a practiced ease. Brandon, Vivian, and Chloe were near the front, greeting guests with forced smiles. John's pulse quickened, a surge of adrenaline. "Evening, Ms. Davies," Brandon said warmly, extending his hand. "And your guest?" John extended his hand. "Thorne, John Thorne." Brandon smiled, shaking his hand with a politician's practiced grip. "Please do come in. This is my wife, Vivian, and our daughter, Chloe." Brandon introduced them, his arm proprietarily around Vivian. John merely nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Mrs. Wilson." "Miss Wilson." Chloe offered a polite, distant smile. Vivian gave him a strange, unsettling look. She appeared tired, gaunt, and deeply unsettled. John wondered if she recognized him, but he kept moving, maintaining his composure. At their assigned table, Sarah leaned inconspiratorially. "He's still wearing that same Rolex," John whispered, his voice laced with bitter irony. "The one Vivian gave him?" she asked, her eyebrows raised. He nodded. 10 years ago. Some things, it seems, never change. The political dinner was precisely as bland and uninspired as expected. Rubbery chicken, interminably dull speeches, and an endless parade of forced smiles. John kept his head down, engaged in polite, superficial conversation, and pushed the unappetizing food around his plate. Occasionally, he glanced at Brandon, catching Chloe looking his way. He thought she gave him a quick, subtle thumbs up. He smiled to himself, a private moment of triumph, and refocused on his meal. Once the dinner concluded, the MC introduced the candidates. Brandon was the first to speak, delivering a thoroughly canned speech about integrity, reform, and public service. When the floor opened for media questions, Sarah's hand shot up immediately. She was called upon without hesitation. "Sarah Davies, the Golden State Gazette." She began, her voice clear and resonant. "We do not know much about you, Mr. Wilson. How close were you with your brother, Officer Ethan Wilson?" Brandon offered a rehearsed, pained smile. "Very close. His death was truly devastating for all of us. And you married his widow shortly after the funeral, correct?" She followed up, her voice unwavering. "Yes." "Then why?" Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. "Did Ethan name both you and your father in the divorce filing just weeks before his tragic death?" Gasps rippled audibly throughout the room. Brandon visibly tensed, his composure beginning to crack. That was a long time ago, he muttered. My brother had some paranoid tendencies, likely tied to his military service. The documents indicate that you and your father submitted a proposal that would have stripped Ethan of all his marital rights, Sarah pressed on, unfazed. Rather unusual for senior partners to get directly involved in a standard divorce case. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Wilson? I do not recall that specific proposal, Brandon said, his voice tight, his eyes darting nervously. We represented Vivian as a personal favor. Before he could further evade, another reporter jumped in. Kevin Riley, Coastal Chronicle. Were you having an affair with your brother's wife at the time of his death, Mr. Wilson? Vivian looked down, her face flushed with shame. Brandon stiffened, his jaw clenched. That is absolutely ridiculous, he snapped, his voice tight with barely contained fury. I love my brother deeply. Kevin pressed on, relentless. Your firm was under investigation for organized crime connections back then, Mr. Wilson. What exactly happened with that? The case was closed, Brandon declared, his voice firm, though a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. We were entirely cleared. A third journalist, Olivia Clark from Channel 7 News, chimed in. Wasn't the case merely suspended due to a lack of evidence, Mr. Wilson? Not actually closed. Brandon's practiced smile faltered completely. Same difference. The MC, sensing the rapidly deteriorating situation, swiftly ended the Q&A session and introduced the next candidate. John leaned towards Sarah, a triumphant glint in his eyes. He's unraveling, Sarah. She nodded, a satisfied smirk on her face. Check the evening news later. This will be everywhere. When the event finally concluded, Brandon, Vivian, and Chloe made a swift, desperate move toward the exit, only to be intercepted by John and Sarah. Mr. Wilson, John said, extending his hand, his voice calm. That is a truly fine watch. Mind if I take a closer look? Brandon hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but then reluctantly handed it over. John flipped it over, revealing the engraved message Sarah already knew about. I once knew someone with a watch just like this, John said casually, handing it back to Brandon, his eyes locking with Vivian's for a fleeting second. Quite the gift, Mrs. Wilson. Yes, well, thank you, she stammered, clearly puzzled, her eyes narrowing slightly. Thorne, John said smoothly, giving a small, almost imperceptible nod. Nice to meet you all. He gave Chloe a small, reassuring nod before he and Sarah walked off, leaving the trio standing there, bewildered and unsettled. She's definitely suspicious, John, Sarah whispered, a knowing look on her face. Yeah, he replied, but we got exactly what we needed tonight. Outside, Sarah began gathering her belongings. Thanks again, John, she said, her voice warm. Care for a proper dinner sometime? Something that doesn't come with a campaign flyer. I'd love to, Sarah, he replied, a genuine smile gracing his lips. But I have to file this story tonight. It's breaking news. Later, as he dropped her off at her apartment, Sarah turned to him, her expression serious. I looked up your old LAMPD record, John, she admitted. You had a reputation. Tough, no nonsense, a true straight arrow. John said nothing, his gaze fixed on the distance. But tonight, she continued, her voice soft, I witnessed remarkable restraint. Watching your ex-wife and the man who literally shot you, knowing they believe you are dead, that couldn't have been easy for you. No, he said quietly, his voice raw, but I'm hoping to reconnect fully with my daughter. She's incredibly smart, and she clearly adores you, John. Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. Listen, how do you feel about country music? I love it, he admitted, surprised. Great, she exclaimed. Then next Friday, pick me up at 6:30. I know a place with ice-cold beer, amazing burgers, and some fantastic line dancing. Do I need to get boots? He asked, a rare grin spreading across his face. You'll figure out, cowboy, she teased. Just don't step on my toes. He chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. It's a date, then. At her door, she leaned in and gave him a light, lingering kiss on the cheek. See you Friday, cowboy, she said, her eyes sparkling. John walked back to his SUV, beaming like a kid after his very first crush. Back home, he immediately flipped on the news. Eventually, the highly anticipated coverage of the political event appeared. Tonight's candidate forum unexpectedly turned tense. The anchor reported, her voice grave. Attorney Brandon Wilson faced a barrage of tough questions regarding his late brother and past legal controversies. Footage then showed Brandon visibly rattled, sweating under the relentless pressure. John leaned back in his chair, a profound sense of satisfaction washing over him. It had certainly not been a good night for Brandon Wilson. As the news segment concluded, the anchor's voice added, Wilson was specifically asked if he had engaged in an affair with his late brother's wife. He vehemently denied it, claiming he loved his brother deeply. Just then, John's phone buzzed. It was Chloe. Hey, princess, he answered, his voice softening. Hi, Dad, she replied, her voice brimming with excitement. So, who was the gorgeous woman you were with tonight? Her name is Sarah, he said, a smile in his voice. She's a reporter. I take it you approve? Definitely, she said, a mischievous tone in her voice. Excellent taste, Dad. Well, we've got a real date lined up for next Friday, he told her. Nice, she exclaimed. By the way, Mom and Brandon are absolutely losing it. Reporters haven't stopped calling since they got home. Whatever you did, Dad, it worked. John laughed, a deep, satisfied sound. He certainly didn't look too comfortable up there, did he? I've got school early tomorrow, so I should go, Chloe said. Just wanted to say hi. Love you, Dad. Love you too, princess, he replied. Be safe. Moments later, Alex called. Brandon looked like a complete wreck on the news tonight, John, he said, sounding pleased. Sarah really pushed his buttons, didn't she? Yeah, John replied, a grim satisfaction in his voice. Going public was definitely the right strategic move. We've also picked up more compromising calls and video from their house, Alex added. Even your father called, John. He is absolutely furious about how Brandon mishandled the questions and the entire evening. No surprise there, John said. Chloe tells me they're completely coming unglued. I got a few more things cooking on my end, John, Alex said. Let's talk very soon. Something tells me Brandon's high-profile political backers are not thrilled with his recent performance. Over the next few days, John maintained his relentless pressure campaign. More anonymous calls, more subtle, unnerving taunts. Meanwhile, he went shopping for jeans and boots for his upcoming date. Something he hadn't done in a decade. Chloe joined him after school, her youthful spirit a welcome balm. Looking good, Dad, she teased playfully as he tried on a pair of rugged boots. You might just get lucky tonight, he chuckled, a rare moment of lightness. Do you honestly think Sarah would go for an old guy like me? Old, she scoffed. Dad, you look fantastic. She'd be absolutely crazy not to fall for you. He smiled, genuinely touched by her words, but quickly shifted the subject. How are things holding up at home, princess? Quiet for once, she replied. Brandon's kept his distance, but he and Mom are fighting nonstop. I think it's time we really turn up the heat, don't you? Perhaps, he mused. They're definitely spooked. I've also been seriously contemplating your situation with Brandon, Chloe, John said, his voice softening. Would you be okay if I spoke with Sarah about it? She might be able to offer invaluable help, a different perspective. Chloe hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, Dad, I trust you completely. Just please don't do anything reckless. Later that evening, John received a call from Sarah. Hey, just wanted to give you an update, she said. Our legal team verified the authenticity of the videos. My editor is incredibly interested. He wants more. Do you have anything else? Yes, I do, Sarah, John said, his voice firm. Want to meet for lunch tomorrow? There's something very serious I haven't told you yet. They agreed to meet at a quiet, discreet bistro. When John arrived, Sarah was already seated outside, a warm, inviting smile on her face as he approached. Hey, cowboy, she greeted, her eyes sparkling. Good to see you, Sarah, he said, taking a seat opposite her. Thanks for meeting me on such short notice. What's weighing on your mind, John? She asked, her expression serious. It's about Chloe, he began, his voice tinged with anguish. She knows who I am, and we've been reconnecting in a very profound way. But there's more. She confided in me that Brandon has been molesting her since she was 13. Sarah froze, her face hardening, a flicker of raw pain in her eyes. Has she reported it to the authorities? She demanded, her voice tight. She tried twice, John explained, his voice grim, but Vivian covered for him, denied everything, and then threatened Chloe. She cannot stay in that house, John, Sarah stated firmly, her voice resolute. I know, he agreed, his jaw clenched. She's 18 now, almost done with high school. She plans to leave for West Coast University this fall. For now, she's just trying to stay safe. We've wired the house for audio and video, but I worry about her every single day. I have a spare bedroom, John, Sarah offered, her voice gentle but firm. If she wants out, she is more than welcome to stay with me. I will be happy to talk to her, woman to woman. That would mean the world to me, Sarah, John said, a profound gratitude in his voice. She could truly use a woman's perspective right now. Then let's talk to her today, if possible, Sarah urged. John nodded and immediately dialed his daughter. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, Dad, Chloe answered. Hey, Princess, can you meet me and Sarah now? John asked. Where are you? He gave her the bistro's address. Perfect. I just finished my self-defense class. Give me 15 minutes. We'll be out back, John said and hung up. He turned to Sarah. She's on her way. I hope that's truly okay with you, Sarah. Of course, John, Sarah replied, a warm smile on her face. It will be nice to have another woman around for a change. She paused, then continued, her voice softer. Oh, my daughter lived with me after my divorce, she confided. My ex cheated relentlessly. I kicked him out. Then, tragically, my daughter died. A drunk driver. She was only 16 years old. John's expression softened, his heart aching with empathy. I'm so incredibly sorry, Sarah. I had no idea. I know exactly what it feels like to want revenge, John, she said, her voice raw with shared pain. And I'm guessing you want to rip Brandon apart piece by piece. Believe me, he admitted, his voice low. I've imagined it in vivid detail. Well, don't, Sarah stated firmly. Chloe needs you, John. She needs her father. And for what it's worth, I like you, John Thorne. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile. John raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in his eyes. Me? I'm an old man, Sarah. Sarah laughed, a clear, melodious sound. Please, John, I'm 44. You can't be more than a couple of years older than me. 47, he admitted, a sheepish grin on his face. You don't look a day over 35, cowboy, she teased. Keep that up, and I might actually let you buy me dinner someday, she winked. But seriously, John, don't lose control. There's an old saying, never go to war with someone who buys ink by the barrel. I hear you, Sarah. John nodded, taking her words to heart. Did you bring more video footage? Yeah, he said, pulling out his laptop and transferring files to a thumb drive. It's intense. Use what you need to tell the story. Just then, Chloe arrived, her face bright. John stood to greet her, pulling her into a warm hug, and then introduced her to Sarah. I saw you at the event, Ms. Davies, Chloe said, her voice filled with admiration. You were absolutely amazing. Brandon didn't know what hit him. Thanks, Sarah smiled, genuinely pleased. Hey, John, why don't you give us a minute for some girl talk? Sure, he said, kissing Chloe's cheek. Thanks again, Sarah. Half an hour, she said. John nodded and left them to talk. He returned about 30 minutes later to find them laughing together like old friends, a comforting sound that filled the bistro. The avenging warrior returns, Sarah joked, a playful glint in her eyes. Okay, here's the deal. Chloe is coming to stay with me until she starts West Coast University. She is welcome for as long as she wants, on one condition. I'll cover all her expenses, John said quickly, not wanting her to bear any financial burden. I wouldn't expect you to do that, John, Sarah replied. That's appreciated, but that's not the condition. The condition is that you join us for dinner as often as you possibly can, preferably every night and most weekends, too. John smiled, his heart swelling. 2 conditions, then, he conceded, but I'm absolutely in. Chloe rushed to him, hugging him tightly. Thanks, Dad. I love you so much. Love you too, princess, he said, his eyes misting with emotion. Sarah reached out to Chloe. Let me check your phone, Chloe. I want to make sure they're not tracking you. Chloe handed it over without hesitation, and Sarah quickly disabled GPS and location services, then added her own number. All set, Sarah said, handing it back. What will you tell your mom, Chloe? John asked. Just that I'm staying with a friend, she replied, her voice firm. I'm 18. She can't stop me. She turned to both of them, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you. Seriously, I don't know where I'd be without you two. She smiled at Sarah. I'll see you tonight. You've got the key? Sarah asked. Chloe held it up. Right here. Bye. After she left, John looked at Sarah. I can't thank you enough, Sarah, especially since we barely know each other. Sarah reached for his hand, her fingers interlacing with his. My instincts are usually spot on, John, and something tells me you're someone truly worth trusting. John nodded, a silent acknowledgement. But promise me, Sarah insisted, her gaze serious. Don't do anything reckless with Brandon and Vivian. You promised me earlier. I won't, he said, his voice firm. Promise me, John, she repeated, her eyes unwavering. I promise, Sarah. Good, she said. I need to get going and prep for my new roommate. I'll also see what I can dig up on those emergency calls Chloe mentioned. If she truly reported it, there will be an official record. Thanks, Sarah. Let me know what you discover. After she departed, John's phone rang again. It was Alex. Got a minute, Johnny boy? Alex asked, his voice urgent. Sure, come by. You need to hear this. Something very significant just came in. John drove directly to Alex's discreet office. Alex greeted him with a serious, unsmiling expression and turned his laptop screen around. Watch this, Alex instructed. Video and audio were perfectly synced on the screen, ready to play. On the screen, Brandon was in his office, picking up the phone. Wilson, he answered, tried to sound composed. Bobby, came the voice on the other end, thick with an unmistakable New York accent. Marco, Brandon replied, attempting to sound casual, though a tremor was evident in his voice. It's been a while, Bobby. Marco wasted no time with pleasantries. What's all this crap I'm hearing about your campaign? Bad press, Bobby. Very bad. Some reporter blindsided me with stuff about my brother. Marco, Brandon said nervously, his face paling. I thought we tied off that loose end years ago. So did I, Bobby, Marco snarled. Well, Vinny's not happy. You know how Vinny gets when he's displeased. We've poured serious money into your campaign. We need this cleaned up now. I'll handle it, Brandon muttered, his voice barely audible. Maybe I should deal with that reporter? What? You're going to take out a journalist now, Bobby? Are you completely nuts? Marco snapped, his voice rising in volume. The story's already all over the place. What? You going to liquidate every blogger too. Look, Marco, I'll talk to her, Brandon stammered. I'll try to calm things down. You better, Bobby, Marco warned, his voice laced with chilling menace. Vinny expects results, or next time you won't get a call. You understand me. Brandon gulped, his throat tight with fear. I get it, Marco. I'll fix it. The video ended. Brandon's face had gone ghostly pale. Alex looked at John, his expression grim. His backers are definitely not happy, John observed. He looked ready to faint. Worse than that, Alex replied. Marco the Butcher Rossi is working for Vincenzo Vinny Rossi, probably the most dangerous mob boss in the entire country, and he's been trying to buy influence all across the United States. Do you think we should let them deal with Brandon and Vivian? John asked, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Perhaps if we leak just enough information to the media, it might light a fire under Vinny himself. Wasn't Vinny the guy the feds were after back when you got shot? Alex recalled. Yeah, and based on how badly they bungled the case, I bet he had someone inside the bureau itself. Let's review all the old footage, Alex, John suggested. See if they ever mention Vinny or his crew directly. Good idea, Alex agreed. They were surprisingly open about planning your murder. Maybe we'll catch more. Oh, and how are things progressing with Sarah? He asked, a knowing smirk on his face. Going very well, John smiled, a warmth in his eyes. Chloe's staying with her until university. She's a good one, John, Alex said, his voice serious. Just don't screw it up. John raised a brow, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Why didn't you ever go for her, Alex? You two seemed close. Alex grinned, a genuine, easy smile. Because it's illegal, Johnny boy. She's my sister. Seriously? John exclaimed, genuinely surprised. Yep. Her ex cheated constantly, and after her daughter tragically died, she went through a really dark, difficult time. Take care of her, John. I will, Alex, he promised, his voice sincere. That evening, John headed to Sarah's place for dinner, a spring in his step. Chloe answered the door, dressed in casual clothes, a wide, welcoming grin on her face. Sarah looked relaxed and beautiful in denim shorts. As the irresistible smell of lasagna hit him, John's stomach growled in eager anticipation. Come on in, cowboy, Sarah said warmly, stepping aside. They sat down to eat, a comfortable silence settling over them. Sarah asked John to say grace, and for the first time in many years, he felt a profound sense of belonging, a part of a real, functional family. He devoured 2 generous plates of lasagna and even went back for seconds on the green beans. The girls watched, amused by his hearty appetite. That might just be the best lasagna I've ever had, Sarah, John said, leaning back, completely satisfied. There's more for tomorrow, if you're interested, Sarah said with a teasing smile. Count me in, he said, then turned to Chloe. Any word from your mom or Brandon today? She called earlier, Chloe said. I told her I'm staying with a friend. She wasn't happy about it, but I reminded her I'm legally an adult. I think she finally got the message. John nodded. Good. Sarah spoke up, her voice serious. I pulled the emergency call records, John. Chloe was telling the absolute truth. She called the LAMPD twice. Vivian and Brandon managed to convince the responding officers that nothing was amiss, that it was a misunderstanding. Chloe looked down, uncomfortable with the dredging up of painful memories. Sarah gave her a soft, comforting smile. We can talk more tonight, Chloe. Just the two of us, if that's okay. Yeah, Chloe said quietly, a flicker of hope in her eyes. John cleared his throat. We also obtained audio of Brandon talking to a high-level mob associate. We're reasonably certain Vincenzo Rossi is backing his campaign, and he's incredibly pissed off about the bad press. Wasn't Rossi tied to your father, Arthur? Sarah asked, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Yeah, John confirmed. Alex and I are digging through old files to see if there's any direct link between them. So far, nothing conclusive, but we're still diligently looking. Sarah nodded. Well, let me know what you find. I'll continue digging on my end, too. Did you know there's specialized software that transcribes audio? Sarah asked, a curious look on her face. John shook his head. No clue. I've been off the grid for a while. Remember, do you guys use it at the paper? Sarah laughed, a light, melodious sound. I have it right here on my laptop. It's not perfect, but it's infinitely faster than manually typing everything out. How much footage are we talking about, John? Hundreds of hours, John said, a grim expression on his face. Bring it over, Sarah offered, her resolve firm. I'll get started on it right away. I can help too, Chloe added eagerly. As long as your homework comes first, Princess, John said with a smile. Yes, Dad, she replied, a faint blush on her cheeks, then headed off to study. Once Chloe was gone, Sarah turned to him, a thoughtful expression on her face. She's a truly great kid, John. She really is, John agreed, his voice filled with tenderness. I think she'll make one incredible lawyer someday. I'd bet on it, Sarah concurred. They cleaned up dinner together, a quiet, comfortable rhythm developing between them. As they rinsed dishes, Sarah grew quiet, her eyes misting slightly. Are you okay, Sarah? He asked, pulling her gently into a comforting hug. It's just been a very long time since I had a man helping out in the kitchen, she said, her voice soft, tinged with emotion. I know the feeling, John replied softly, understanding her unspoken pain. She kissed him gently, then poured 2 glasses of wine, and they settled together on the comfortable couch. So what's the very next step? She asked, her voice low. Alex and I are digging deeper into the Rossi connection, he explained. If Vincenzo Rossi is truly backing Brandon, he might decide to deal with him himself, in his own unique way. You know, Alex is my brother, right? Sarah said, a small smile on her face. Yeah, John replied. He told me earlier. I was going to mention it before, she confessed, but I wanted to get to know you first, John. You both saved my life, Sarah, John said, his voice heartfelt. I will never, ever forget that. He's helped me immensely too, she added, especially after my divorce and after my daughter. By the way, John said, returning to the grim topic, do you truly think Vincenzo Rossi would actually go after Brandon? I wouldn't rule it out, John, she said, her voice serious. He has a fearsome reputation for dealing with perceived betrayals. Even if he doesn't physically liquidate him, he could utterly destroy everything Brandon has built, professionally and personally. My editor gave me the green light to aggressively pursue the story, Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with journalistic fervor. But I need to be extremely careful. No lawsuits, no legal entanglements for the paper. Can the old videos help with that? John asked. Possibly, she replied. We can't publish them directly in print, but I can run them on the Golden State Gazette website carefully with appropriate disclaimers. I'll run it by my editor first. If he's in, John, this could finish Brandon for good. John checked his watch. I should say goodnight to Chloe and head out, Sarah. Thank you again for dinner. Sarah kissed him again, more deeply this time, a passionate, lingering kiss. When they broke apart, she teased, her eyes sparkling. Maybe next time you can stay for dessert, cowboy. I like that very much, Sarah, he smiled, his heart soaring. Just then, Chloe walked in, a mischievous look on her face. You two need a timeout, she declared, a playful smirk on her face. John kissed Sarah goodnight, hugged his daughter, and left, a profound sense of happiness warming him from the inside out. The next day, John spent hours meticulously organizing and burning the incriminating video footage on multiple DVDs for Sarah and Chloe. He hadn't realized the sheer volume of damning evidence he possessed until he began sorting it all chronologically. That evening, over dinner at Sarah's apartment, John handed the discs to her. She was visibly stunned by the sheer quantity. "My editor wants to lead with the affair first," she explained, her voice firm. "Once we build that undeniable foundation, we'll strategically bring in the rest of the information. If Brandon threatens to sue John, we will bury him completely with the unvarnished truth, exposing every vile detail." "When does it go live, Sarah?" John asked, a thrilling anticipation coursing through him. "Tomorrow morning's edition," she confirmed, a triumphant glint in her eyes. "It's going to blow up the entire political landscape." John grinned, a dark, satisfied expression on his face. "Can't wait." Sure enough, the story dominated the headlines the very next morning. An explosive article in the Golden State Gazette accuses state Senate candidate Brandon Wilson of a scandalous affair with the widow of his brother, slain Officer Ethan Wilson. One news anchor dramatically announced, her voice grave. The paper cites compelling video evidence showing Vivian Wilson in intimate situations with both Brandon and his father, Superior Court Judge Arthur Wilson. While the explicit footage was not aired, published screenshots unequivocally confirm the scandalous nature of the content. The report continued. Officer Wilson's divorce papers, filed shortly before his death, explicitly named both Brandon and Daniel Wilson and allege an ongoing affair with Vivian. The article also meticulously connected Brandon's prestigious law firm to an Atlantic seaboard crime syndicate, reportedly the very same organized crime group under federal investigation a decade ago. While authorities never officially confirmed the link, the anchor concluded, the resurfacing of this story raises serious, deeply troubling questions. Neither Brandon nor Vivian responded to numerous press inquiries. The judge, Arthur Wilson, conspicuously declined comment. John smiled, a profound sense of vindication washing over him as the anchors delivered the devastating damage. The truth, after 10 long years, was finally out, and the fallout had only just begun. Officer Ethan Wilson was found dead in his home just days after filing for divorce. The news anchor added, her voice somber. Sources suggest more shocking details may emerge soon. Stay tuned. John, usually indifferent to the morning paper, eagerly opened it and scanned Sarah's meticulously researched article. There it was in stark black and white. The affair, the mob ties, and blurry, incriminating images from the video, all laid bare in print. It even subtly hinted that Ethan's death might not have been a random act, but a deliberate, calculated murder. As he reveled in the moment of triumph, his phone rang. "Thorne," he answered, his voice firm. "Did you read it, John?" Sarah asked, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Just finished," he replied. "It's truly excellent, Sarah." "I'm so glad," she said. "I've been absolutely swamped with calls since the paper hit the stands. Dinner might be a little late tonight, I'm afraid." "No worries at all, Sarah," he assured her. "Chloe and I will handle it." "Perfect. See you tonight." Just as he ended the call, another one came through, marked private number. "Thorne," he said, a sense of foreboding settling over him. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne," came a heavy, unmistakable New York accent. "Marco." John instantly recognized the voice from Brandon's earlier frantic phone call. "Who is this?" John demanded, his voice steady. "There's a black car heading your way, Mr. Thorne. 2 of our men will escort you to meet my boss. Do exactly what they instruct, and you'll be perfectly fine. Is that clear?" "Crystal," John replied, his mind already racing. He immediately called Alex and explained the situation. "You'll probably be fine, Johnny boy," Alex said, his voice grim. "Just keep your phone tracking app activated. I'll follow your signal, but they might be using signal blockers. Sounds like Vinny Rossi's crew is making a move." Within minutes, a sleek, ominous black sedan pulled up silently outside his apartment building. Two large, impeccably dressed men in dark suits approached, their faces impassive. Without uttering a single word, they swiftly frisked him, confiscated his phone, and blindfolded him before expertly guiding him into the back seat. John did not resist, his mind already working, counting turns, estimating time as the ride stretched on for close to an hour. Eventually, the car came to a smooth stop. One of the men helped him out, walked him through a heavy metal door, and then removed the blindfold. His eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light, revealing a sparsely furnished room. And there, seated at a large, imposing desk, was Vincenzo Vinny Rossi himself. "Mr. Thorne, a distinct pleasure," the man said, a slight, unnerving smile playing on his lips as he extended a manicured hand. "Come with me." John followed him into another room. There, shackled tightly to the cold stone wall, wearing nothing but their underwear, were Brandon, Vivian, and Judge Arthur Wilson. Pale and terrified, they were chained at the wrists and ankles, slumped on the unforgiving floor. "I thought you might want to see them one last time, Mr. Thorne," Vinny said casually, his voice smooth as silk, utterly devoid of emotion. Brandon looked up, his eyes wide with stunned disbelief. "Ethan, is that really you?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "No," John said coldly, his voice flat and detached. "Ethan's gone, Brandon, and you helped liquidate him, along with her," he added, glaring at Vivian, a venomous intensity in his gaze. "You planned it. All of you. You murdered him." Vinny's burly guard stood nearby, holding a menacing taser. John looked at the taser, then at Vinny. "May I?" he asked, his voice low. Vinny gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The guard silently handed the taser over. John crouched near Brandon, speaking in a low, dangerous voice, yet loud enough for the others to hear every word. "This," he hissed, pressing the taser firmly to Brandon's exposed side, "is for what you did to Chloe." He triggered the taser. Brandon screamed, writhing uncontrollably, his body convulsing in agony. John stood and delivered a hard, swift kick to Brandon's ribs. "And that," he stated, his voice thick with a decade of pent-up rage, "is for betraying your own brother, for destroying his life." Brandon whimpered, barely conscious, barely able to respond. "Why?" John asked quietly, his voice hollow. Brandon looked up, his voice barely a whisper, filled with a twisted, chilling sincerity. "Because it was fun." John shook his head in profound disgust, unable to believe the depths of their depravity. "Unbelievable," he muttered. He turned to Vivian, his eyes filled with a cold contempt. "Ethan loved you, Vivian. He cherished you. You systematically destroyed him. And then you allowed that monster to harm your own daughter. You do not deserve pity. You deserve nothing." Finally, he addressed Arthur, his voice laced with bitter irony. "You were supposed to represent justice, Judge. Instead, you joined them and plotted murder, sanctioned child abuse." John kicked Arthur once, a precise, measured kick, then stepped back, handing the taser back to the impassive guard. He looked at Vinny. "I appreciate the invitation, Mr. Rossi." Vinny nodded, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Sometimes, Mr. Thorne, justice simply needs a little help finding its way home." John said nothing more. He left the room without a backward glance, the screams of his tormentors fading behind him. As John turned to leave, he paused at the doorway. "Anything else, Mr. Rossi?" Vinny shook his head, a faint, almost benevolent smile on his lips. "No, Mr. Thorne. I just thought you might want to say goodbye, a final farewell." John glanced back at the shackled trio, Brandon, Vivian, and Judge Arthur Wilson, their faces etched with terror and despair. "Goodbye," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "And good riddance." He turned back to Vinny. I considered ending it myself once, Mr. Rossi, years ago. But I made a solemn promise to someone I trust that I wouldn't cross that line, and I always keep my word. Vinny nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. That's precisely why I respect you, Mr. Thorne. And yes, I know exactly who you are. I also know your daughter is heading to West Coast University. She wants to be a prosecutor. She'll be an outstanding one, John replied, a flicker of pride in his eyes. I do not fear honest prosecutors, Mr. Thorne. I have the best lawyers in the country for that. But betrayal? He looked back at the three condemned figures. That, Mr. Thorne, I do not forgive. You have been given something extraordinarily rare, a second chance at life. Take care of your daughter. Be good to Miss Davies. And live well, Mr. Thorne. They shook hands, a silent understanding passing between them. Via John, Vinny said. The same to you, Mario, John replied. Moments later, the guards blindfolded John, carefully returned him home, handed back his phone and a small, unopened bottle of aged brandy. For Mr. Rossi, sir, one of them said. John nodded, watching them depart before stepping onto his balcony, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands to calm his frayed nerves. He immediately called Alex. You all right, Johnny boy? Alex asked, his voice laced with concern. I lost your phone signal completely. I'm fine, Alex. They took my phone during the meeting, but it's back now. You were right. It was Vincenzo Rossi. Alex sighed in relief. They must have deployed signal blockers. It's a very good thing Chloe's not there anymore. That evening, John arrived at Sarah's apartment, his heart still pounding, a mixture of adrenaline and profound relief surging through him. Chloe answered the door, her face etched with worry, and hugged him tightly. Dad, are you okay? Better now, princess, he said, holding her close. Sarah called from the kitchen. She'll be working late tonight. Feel like ordering pizza? Absolutely, John replied, a genuine smile gracing his lips. I even brought cards, ready to lose in spades. Chloe smiled, a rare moment of levity. You wish, Dad. They spent hours laughing, playing cards, and sharing stories. A normal family evening after a decade of unimaginable chaos. At 9 p.m., Sarah called. Turn on the news, John, she said, her voice urgent. Something's happened. Looks like Vincenzo Rossi handled Brandon and Vivian himself. John quickly switched to the local channel. This just in, the anchor reported, her voice somber. The home of State Senate candidate Brandon Wilson has burned to the ground. 3 bodies were found within the charred remains. Authorities suspect foul play, though identities remain unconfirmed at this hour. Chloe broke down in tears, a raw, wrenching sob escaping her. John held her close as she wept into his shoulder. His phone rang again. Alex, he answered, his voice low. You saw the news, Johnny boy? Alex asked, his voice grim. Yeah. Were they alive when you left them, John? They were, he confirmed, his voice firm. I made a promise to Sarah, and I kept it. I believe you, John, Alex said. Stay close to Chloe and Sarah. After hanging up, Chloe looked at him through tear-filled eyes. Dad, did you do this? No, princess, John said firmly, his gaze unwavering. I wanted them to hurt. I won't lie to you, Chloe, but I did not do this. I swear on anything you want, if that's what it takes. Have I ever lied to you? No, she said quietly, her voice trembling. Soon after, Sarah called. Tell me you didn't know about this, John, she pleaded, her voice strained. I didn't, Sarah, John assured her, his voice sincere. Good, she replied, a sigh of relief evident. The police are coming to check on Chloe. I had to inform them where she is. I'll be home as soon as I can. How's she holding up, John? She's shaken, Sarah, but she'll be okay, he said. All right, John. Take care of her. I'll be there very soon. After hanging up, John ordered pizza, determined to give his daughter one night of fragile normalcy after a decade of unimaginable chaos. John was sitting quietly with Chloe when a knock came at the door. Two Los Angeles Metro Police Department officers stood outside. One of them, Sergeant Miller, was someone John had worked with a decade ago, a familiar face from his past life. "Is Chloe Wilson here?" Miller asked, his gaze sharp. "She is." "Please come in, Sergeant," John said, stepping aside. Miller gave him a long, scrutinizing look. "And you are?" "John Thorne," he replied, his voice calm. "I'm a friend of Sarah Davies, looking after Chloe." "ID, please, Mr. Thorne," Miller requested. John handed over his driver's license. Miller examined it carefully, then nodded slowly, his eyes still narrowed in suspicion. "Where were you around 5 p.m. this evening, Mr. Thorne?" he asked, his voice clipped. "Came straight here from my place," John replied smoothly. "Been playing cards with Chloe since then." He motioned toward the table where a game of spades still lay spread out. "You remind me of someone I used to know, Mr. Thorne," Miller said, his gaze fixed on him. "Ever know the Wilsons?" "Nope," John replied, his voice flat, his face betraying nothing. Turning to Chloe, Miller said, his voice softening, "Chloe, I am so sorry, but your mother, Brandon, and your grandfather were all found deceased in a house fire tonight." Chloe wiped her tears, her face a mask of sorrow and grim satisfaction. "Brandon wasn't my father," she stated, her voice surprisingly firm despite her tears. "He was my uncle. And why am I staying here, Sergeant? Because Brandon molested me for years. Sarah offered me a safe place until university starts." "Did you ever report it, Chloe?" Miller asked, his face darkening with concern and a hint of suppressed anger. "Twice," she replied, her voice filled with a decade of pain. "No one believed me, and my mom threatened me relentlessly." Miller's face hardened with genuine regret and empathy. "I am truly sorry, Chloe. Truly. I knew your father, Ethan Wilson. He was an outstanding cop, a good man." He handed her his card. "If you need anything at all, Chloe, please call. There's also a counselor's number on the back." He turned to John. "Mr. Thorne, please strongly consider getting her some professional help. This will be incredibly difficult for her." Once they left, the pizza finally arrived, and Sarah came in shortly after, her face etched with concern. Chloe was still shaken, and Sarah immediately embraced her, holding her tightly, before heading to the kitchen where John was quietly slicing pizza. Sarah could tell something profound weighed heavily on him. "We need to talk, Sarah," John said, setting the plates down. "I swear to you, Sarah, I had absolutely nothing to do with what happened tonight," he stated firmly, his eyes unwavering. "I promised you I wouldn't cross that line, and I didn't." He explained in detail how Vincenzo Rossi's men had taken him to a hidden, undisclosed location where he saw Vivian, Brandon, and Arthur alive, but restrained. "I confronted them," John explained, his voice low. "I even hit Brandon once, but I left them alive. I honestly figure Rossi just wanted to scare them, to send a powerful message." Sarah and Chloe listened in stunned, profound silence. "I believe you, John," Sarah said gently, her voice full of trust. "Me too, Dad," Chloe added, hugging him tightly. Tears welled in John's eyes, blurring his vision. "There was a time, Sarah, a very long time, when I wanted them dead for everything they did to us, for everything they stole. But that's not who I am anymore. Not since finding you two again. Not since I got my second chance." "You spoke with Rossi?" Sarah asked, her voice hushed. "Yes," he confirmed. "He told me I'd been given a rare, precious gift, a second chance at life with you both. And I won't waste it, ever." Sarah hugged him tightly, pressing her face into his shoulder. "You're not the man you were 10 years ago, John," she whispered. "You're better. You're so much better." Later that night, Sarah asked him to stay. "Not the couch," "Cowboy," she said with a warm, inviting smile. "With me, if Chloe's okay with it." Chloe smiled, a genuine, happy smile. "Absolutely, Dad." They finished their pizza, the lingering scent of normalcy in the air, and John spent the night with Sarah. The next morning, he woke to find her curled peacefully beside him, her breathing soft and even. He smiled, a profound sense of wholeness filling him. He was truly, finally home. 6 months later, John and Sarah were happily married. Alex stood proudly as John's best man. Chloe, radiant and full of hope, served as Sarah's maid of honor. Life, after a decade of unimaginable turmoil, had finally found its peaceful, fulfilling rhythm. Autopsies revealed that the three victims, Brandon, Vivian, and Arthur, had died from smoke inhalation. Investigators attributed the rapid spread of the fire to faulty wiring in their old, wooden home, which had been exacerbated by stacks of paper and legal books, turning it into a raging inferno. Chloe began her studies at West Coast University, happily splitting her time between campus and her dad's new place with Sarah. John, though financially secure beyond anything he could have imagined, joined Alex's private investigator firm, not for the money, but to keep busy, to feel productive, to find purpose in his new life. Then one day, Chloe called him, her voice tinged with sadness. John's mother, Eleanor, was in the hospital, battling terminal cancer and advanced dementia. She wasn't expected to last much longer. John took Sarah and Chloe with him to see her, a pilgrimage to the past. When he entered her hospital room, she slowly, painfully opened her eyes. "Ethan, is that really you?" she whispered, her voice frail. John took her thin, trembling hand in his. "It's me, Mom. I go by John Thorne now. And yes, Mom, I forgive you for everything." Tears streamed down her withered face as he gently hugged her. "Thank you, John," she whispered, a profound peace settling over her. Now I can go in peace." She passed away peacefully weeks later, but not before updating her will, meticulously dividing her estate between John and Chloe. John buried her beside his father, Arthur, standing over the 4 graves, his former family, now resting in the earth. John realized with crystalline clarity that Vincenzo Rossi was right. He had been given something truly rare and precious, a brand new life. And this time, he was going to live it fully, deeply, and well.